Hold this.
Dark Side of the Moon. Streaming now.
Hello and welcome to News 9. I'm Varghese Abraham. First up, let's take a look at the developments coming in from Maldives. According to a report that was given in by the Indian Express, the Maldives, under President Mohammad Mizo's leadership, has chosen not to renew an agreement with India for a hydrographic survey a month after requesting the withdrawal of Indian military personnel. The shift follows the government's India Out campaign. The agreement, signed in 2019, had allowed India to survey Maldivian waters. The Maldivian government, in charge since November, informed India of its decision not to go ahead and renew the pact that had India being part of an effort to go with the hydrographic survey in its territorial waters. Now, this move marks the termination of the first bilateral agreement under the new administration, which was officially concluded on June 7th, 2024. Now, there are provisions within this particular agreement that says that the other country, when it desires to terminate this particular agreement, need to be informed 6 months in advance, and therefore Moizu, the new president of the Maldivian state, has asked the Indian government that it does not have the intention to continue with the hydrographic survey in its territorial waters. Now, this is the second such demand that has come from Moizu, who had won recently the presidential polls. Moizu is said to be a China hand, and at the same time has been asking for the withdrawal of Indian personnel from the island.
So, would you mind doing another wave, please?
Lalit Jha, who is suspected mastermind behind the shocking security breach in Parliament, has voluntarily surrendered to the police. Reports are indicating that he walked into the police station at Kartavya Path and surrendered after being on the run for almost 2 days. The Kolkata-based teacher claimed he travelled by bus to Rajasthan's Nagaur via Nimrana, where he was staying at a hotel with 2 friends, and travelled to Kartavya Path station when he came to know that the police were after him. In a significant revelation to the police, the accused Lalit disclosed that he set the mobile phone on fire. Alongside Mahesh, Lalit intentionally burned the phone, which belonged to him and 4 companions who were involved in that incident. Prior to the act, all 4 individuals handed their phones to Lalit, who subsequently fled the scene after recording the video of the incident. The breach involved 4 individuals who smuggled in smoke bombs during Lok Sabha proceedings. Investigators disclosed that the motive behind the smoke bomb protest was to draw attention to unemployment, farmer issues and Manipur's situation. The group is associated with the fans of Bhagat Singh Facebook page. During the court proceedings, Delhi police sought a 2 weeks custody of the accused, charging them under UAPA and sections of the Indian Penal Code. The police argued that the operation resembled a terror attack, raising questions about the underlying motives. They emphasized the need to investigate further any terrorist organization was involved in the incident. What we understand is that Lalit Jha is said to be the mastermind behind this particular operation that was carried out in the parliament, when we had people jumping in from the visitors gallery and also detonating a smoke grenade inside the Lok Sabha. There we can have the visuals of the people who are involved in it. It was considered as a major breach of security, and one of the investigators have in fact tried to find out what were the digital footprints of the group that took on this particular aspect. It was found that they were all parts of the fans of Bhagat Singh page on Facebook. It is being said that Lalit Jha is said to be the mastermind behind it, and he is at present in the custody of the police. He has surrendered to the Kartavya Path police, and investigation is going on his alleged role. It is being said that Lalit Jha is a teacher in Kolkata.
लोकतंत्र के सबसे बड़े मंदिर यानी कि संसद में सुरक्षा में सेंध लगाकर सदन में पहुंचकर कैनिस्टर फोड़ने वाले यानी कि जो उत्पात मचाया गया उस मामले में पुलिस ने 4 आरोपियों को गिरफ्तार किया था। सभी आरोपियों को गुरुवार को पटियाला हाउस कोर्ट में पेश किया गया और यहां पर दिल्ली पुलिस की तरफ से कहा गया कि ये जो घटना को अंजाम दिया गया है ये एक आतंकी घटना जैसा है, जहां पर सदन के अंदर गैलरी का पास बनवाया था, लेकिन उसके बावजूद जो हैं दोनों के दोनों जो आरोपी हैं, अगर उसकी बात करें मनोरंजन और सागर की, तो वो सदन के अंदर कूदे और वहाँ पर कैनिस्टर जो जूते में छिपा कर लेकर के आए थे जिसमें जहरीली गैस होती है उसे संसद के अंदर फोड़ा गया। तो वहीं पर नीलम और जो अमोल हैं वो संसद भवन के बाहर जो है उन्होंने इसी तरह की आदत को अंजाम दिया। कुल मिलाकर यहाँ पर कोर्ट में दिल्ली पुलिस की तरफ से कहा गया कि ये इस मामले में आईपीसी और यूएपीए की जो धाराएं हैं उनको लगाया गया है और इस मामले में जांच करने के लिए दिल्ली पुलिस को 15 दिन का रिमांड चाहिए। हालांकि यहाँ पर कोर्ट ने 7 दिन का रिमांड दिया, लेकिन दिल्ली पुलिस की तरफ से दलील दी गई थी कि इस मामले में क्योंकि जो आरोपी हैं वो अलग अलग जगह, कोई महाराष्ट्र से है, कोई जो है मैसूर से है, हरियाणा से है, लखनऊ से है, तो ऐसे में अलग अलग जगह जाना है। साथ में कोर्ट को ये भी जानकारी दी गई कि जो जूते हैं वो लखनऊ से खरीदे गए थे, उसमें बाकायदा कैविटी बनाई गई थी ताकि जो कैनिस्टर है बम जो है उसको वहाँ पर छिपाया जा सके। और ये जो कैनिस्टर हैं वो महाराष्ट्र से खरीदे गए थे और उन्हीं को लाकर के संसद में इस्तेमाल किया गया था। साथ में ये भी कहा गया कि जिस तरीके से इन्होंने जो नारे लगाए थे, जिस तरह की बातें जो हैं वो पोस्टर्स में लिखी हुई थी कि इसका खून ना खौला वो पानी है, साथ ही इन्होंने भगत सिंह फैन क्लब का एक पेज भी बनाया गया था जिसके जरिए एक दूसरे से जुड़े हुए थे। तो वहीं पर प्रधानमंत्री को गुमनाम भी बताया गया था। तमाम इस तरह के एंटी नेशनल स्लोगन जो हैं उनका इस्तेमाल किया गया था। अब पुलिस की तरफ से कहा गया कि इन आरोपियों का संबंध क्या है, इनके पीछे कौन था, तमाम मामलों की जाँच करने के लिए 15 दिन की रिमांड की जरूरत थी। हालांकि ये भी कहा गया कि यूएपीए के तहत जो है 30 दिन का रिमांड मांगा जा सकता है, लेकिन इस मामले में जो पुलिस है उसे 15 दिन की रिमांड चाहिए थी। लेकिन यहाँ पर जो आरोपियों के रिमांड एडवोकेट थे उनकी तरफ से इस बात का विरोध किया गया और कहा गया कि इस मामले में जांच के लिए 4 से 5 दिन ही काफ़ी है। दोनों पक्षों को सुनने के बाद कोर्ट ने इस मामले में जो आरोपी हैं उनकी 7 दिन की रिमांड दे दी। अब देखना होगा कि इन 7 दिनों के अंदर जो पुलिस है वो इन आरोपियों को कहां कहां लेकर के जाती है और इस मामले में क्या और भी कोई लोग हैं जो इसमें सम्मिलित है। जिस तरह कोर्ट ने बताया कि जो ललित झा है वो फरार है, तो और भी इसमें आरोपी हो सकते हैं जिनकी तलाश करनी है पुलिस को। तो तमाम इन 7 दिनों के अंदर इस इन्वेस्टिगेशन को जो है आगे बढ़ाने की कोशिश की जाएगी। अपनी वीडियो से होगी।
The Global Partnership for Artificial Intelligence under India's presidency adopted the New Delhi Declaration on Artificial Intelligence. Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, said that the declaration is promising and it promises to position GPAI at the front and center of shaping artificial intelligence in terms both of innovation and creative collaborative efforts that could help in ensuring that the technology is sound and safe. AI between the partner nations and increasing applications of AI in healthcare, agriculture and other areas are also being looked into as AI becomes one of the joint teams of the government trying to push for better accessibility and also benefiting local communities.
I think a lot has been achieved. There was a very tremendous and an important New Delhi declaration that was adopted unanimously by 29 countries yesterday that speaks to the future of AI, that speaks to the need for these 29 countries to work together to create a governance framework for AI, and secondly, to work together to really create cutting-edge collaborative AI platforms for healthcare, for agriculture, that can benefit the peoples of all the countries in the world. And third, most importantly or equally importantly, yesterday it was decided by all of the countries that AI, the future of AI should be inclusive, that it should not be left to 1 or 2 countries alone, that countries led by India, which our Prime Minister has already done with DPIs, that we must include countries of the global south as we shape the future of AI. And as you can see today in the expo, there are hundreds of startups from India. that are already signaling to the world how mature the Indian AI ecosystem is, what the ambitions of the Indian AI ecosystem are, and I have absolutely no doubt that India will play a pivotal role in the shaping of the governance of AI and also the innovation and the power to do good of AI in the coming years.
The war between Israel and Palestine's Hamas has entered the 70th day.
The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
The war between Israel and Hamas has now entered its 70th day. Let's get you the latest update from the war front. IDF says that around 70 Hamas gunmen have surrendered at northern Gaza hospital and has also released the footage on this. Now, the Israeli military had apparently placed a bounty on Hamas leaders, and they have been distributing leaflets asking them to go ahead and give details and to claim the bounty. Meanwhile, Israel attacks Hamas's sites across Gaza Strip. Palestinian Prime Minister has said that political horizon needed for peace is required for any kind of negotiations to happen, so that there could be some kind of movement towards ending hostilities. Meanwhile, Israeli army released video of ground and aerial assaults in Gaza. It showed the pulverizing of several Gaza neighborhoods. Meanwhile, White House advisors Sullivan and Netanyahu have discussed the war in Gaza and the repercussions it's having at the moment. Sullivan has been engaging with the Israeli leadership ever since the operations in Gaza have begun. The IDF released footage of Palestinian gunmen surrendering at the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza. Israeli troops, in collaboration with the Shin Bet security agency, engaged and defeated Hamas operatives in the hospital area. According to IDF, approximately 70 Hamas members have surrendered, handing over weapons and equipment. They are now undergoing interrogation by the Shin Bet and Military Intelligence Directorate's Unit 504. These are in fact the footage of the weapons that were surrendered by the alleged Palestinian gunmen. 70 of them are said to have gone ahead and surrendered their weapons after an intense engagement with the IDF in Gaza. The IDF released the video of the surrender by the 70 Hamas gunmen. Later, they have taken for interrogation by the Shin Bet. The Israeli military has reportedly placed a bounty on Hamas leaders, with flyers being dropped in the Gaza Strip offering money for information on whereabouts of Yahya Sinwar and other commanders in the terror group. Images of pamphlets are circulating on social media. The pamphlet promises financial incentives, including $400,000 for details on Yahya Sinwar, $300,000 for his brother Muhammad Sinwar, $200,000 for Rafa Salameh, and $100,000 for Mohammed Diya. The flyer contains telephone numbers and contact of Telegram messaging app, with the IDF promising confidentiality. The drone footage showed people at the site of damaged structures following an Israeli airstrike in southern Rafah. Survivors and locals were seen amidst the debris, searching for any signs of life, casualties or salvageable belongings. In the aftermath, Israeli forces have besieged the coastal strip, causing extensive destruction. Now, Palestinian health officials have confirmed nearly 19,000 casualties, with fears of thousands more trapped beneath the rubble. We slip on a short break now. News and updates will continue on the other side.
2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा।
There's certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
What we need is a day after.
As Israel pounded the Gaza Strip on Thursday, Washington's envoy was in Tel Aviv to discuss how its ally could better protect Palestinian civilians in its war on Hamas militants. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and spoke with other officials, including the country's defense minister, about possibly
Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shadeh asserted that the international demands for Palestinian Authority to revamp leadership and intensify reforms divert focus from the essential requirement of political vision for post-Gaza war peace. Now, it is being said that in an interview to a news agency, Shadeh urged international involvement to resolve the long-standing conflict, expressing disappointment with the United States for not employing its regional influence effectively.
Need is a day after for all of the Palestinian territories. What we need is to see an end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the materialization and manifestation of a two-state solution. The issue is give us a political horizon. We need American measures to support the two states. That's what they are saying. So the issue for us is not, whether we reform the health sector or we reform local government sector or this and that and so. That's not the issue. The issue for us is that Palestinians have been suffering for 75 years. And nobody, the people who talk about two-state solution, okay, the two-state solution has become like international anthem. It's just people, they need measures on the ground. That is the thing. This is a paradox that should not be there. So United States can put serious pressure on the Israelis. United States can tell Israel to stop the war. Today what is needed is for the United Nations Security Council to say with a very clear timetable that this Israeli occupation that has occurred on the Palestinian territories since 1967 should end, and this is the timetable that should be given to the Israelis, to the Palestinians, to end this conflict. What we need from the United States really is some sort of implementable measures. We need Washington to walk the walk, not only to talk the talk. So therefore, there are so many measures that Washington can do but has not been doing. So therefore, the only country that can deliver Israel is the United States, and very unfortunately, they are not doing the work. Our people are starving. Those who might escape bombardments might be dying from hunger and starvation. Those who might make it out of starvation, they're dying of their wounds. So there is no medical supplies, there is no food.
As Israel pounded the Gaza Strip on Thursday, Washington's envoy was in Tel Aviv to discuss how its ally could better protect Palestinian civilians in its war on Hamas militants. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and spoke with other officials.
As Israel pounded the Gaza Strip on Thursday, Washington's envoy was in Tel Aviv to discuss how its ally could better protect Palestinian civilians in its war on Hamas militants. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and spoke with other officials, including the country's defense minister, about possibly transitioning to what the White House called lower-intensity military operations in Gaza. Here's White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby.
One of the things that Jake did talk to him about was progress in the war and where the Israelis think it's going to go. He did talk about possible transitioning from what we would call high-intensity operations, which is what we're seeing them do now, to lower-intensity operations sometime, in the near future. But I don't want to put a timestamp on it. I think you can understand that the last thing we'd want to do is telegraph to Hamas what they're likely to face in coming weeks and months.
At an event in Bethesda, Maryland, Reuters asked U.S. President Joe Biden if he wanted Israel to scale back its assault on Gaza by the end of the year.
I want them to be focused on how to save civilian lives, not stop going after Hamas, but be more careful.
Meanwhile, in the Rafah area of southern Gaza, dozens of wounded people were taken to the hospital on Thursday after an Israeli airstrike targeted a house. Paramedics said 6 were killed in the airstrike and dozens were injured, including women and children. Israel launched its campaign in retaliation for a rampage by Hamas, whose fighters killed 1,200 Israelis and seized 240 hostages in a cross-border raid on October 7th. Since then, Israeli forces have bombarded the coastal strip and laid much of it to waste, with nearly 19,000 people confirmed dead, according to Palestinian health officials, and thousands more feared buried under the rubble.
Moving on, Donald Trump's election interference case in Washington will be put on hold while the former president further pursues his claims that he is immune from prosecution. A judge had made that ruling last Wednesday. Now, the decision from the U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan raises the likelihood that Trump's trial on charges of plotting to overturn the 2020 election, currently scheduled for March 4th, will be postponed as the appeal of a legally untested argument winds through the courts. Taiwan's upcoming presidential and parliamentary elections in January highlight the generational rifts over the island's relationship with China. Take a look.
As Taiwan prepares to vote in the presidential and parliamentary elections next month, polls reveal deep divisions between generations towards its relationship with China. At this government-run veterans' care home in northern Taiwan, this former soldier's chest tattoo of the island's flag carries the complexities of those ties. Wang Zhiquan, who is 93, joined the Chinese army when he was only 13 and holds tragic memories of war.
I still dare not watch the news when I watch TV. War is cruel and cold. When I started serving as a soldier, people were forced to enlist during the civil war between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party. When they couldn't catch adults, they would catch children.
Defeated in the Chinese Civil War, the nationalist Kuomintang government fled to Taiwan 7 odd decades ago, but no peace treaty was ever signed to end the war. China's communist government has since been pushing for what it calls reunification with Taiwan and has ramped up its military pressure against the island in the past few years, stoking fears of a war that could drag in the United States. Those tensions are dominating election campaigns in the run-up to Taiwan's January 13th ballot. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party champions the island's separate identity from China. But despite moving to Taiwan and later fighting for its island of Kinmen, Wang's sense of identity remains tied to China.
Taiwan is a part of China. It has been since the Qing and Ming dynasties.
It's a view shared by many from his generation, like fellow care home resident Sun Guoxi. The 110-year-old veteran believes his current government is being provocative. He warns that if a conflict breaks out, the island would be no match for China. Yet their views conflict with mainstream Taiwan, who overwhelmingly view themselves as Taiwanese and not Chinese, according to polls. He is political scientist Song Wen-ti.
There is certainly a generational shift. The older generation was a lot more likely to be for unification, and the younger generation a lot less likely. The younger people tend to have a separate, almost distinct Taiwanese national identity, as opposed to a more Chinese national identity. So in that sense, the trend lines on support for unification is a downward one, less and less support for unification over time.
The main opposition party, the pro-China KMT, has cast the election as a choice between war and peace, a line Beijing has echoed. But as campaigning heats up, some in Taiwan are hoping to mend rifts rather than further the divide. As this 22-year-old says, we can only try our best to understand the others and learn why they might have certain ideas. Even if we can't agree with each other, as humans, we should still be able to talk normally.
Many Russian individuals have taken extraordinary steps by joining the ranks of Ukrainian forces amid the ongoing conflict. Motivated by various factors, these Russians have chosen to fight against their homeland, aligning themselves with Ukrainian military efforts. Notably, a unit named the Siberian Battalion, primarily composed of Russians from ethnic minorities residing in Russia's Far East, have officially been integrated into the regular Ukrainian army. Unlike other volunteer units in the region, the Siberian Battalion undergoes meticulous security checks, a process lasting up to a year before members receive training and are deployed to the lines in eastern Ukraine. This region has witnessed intense and protracted battles between Ukrainian and Russian forces, marking a significant theater of the conflict. As US-made F-16 fighter jets for Ukraine arrive at training centers in United States and Europe, Kyiv's allies hope that the modern aircraft can push Russian planes farther from the front lines, targeting its radar transmitters more effectively and hunting them down with more cruise missiles.
American F-16 fighter jets set for Ukraine are making their way to training centers in the United States and Europe, as Kyiv's allies hope the modern warplane can push Russian jets further from the front lines and change the shape of the battlefield from the air. The F-16 will replace Ukraine's strained and thinning fleet of the Soviet-designed MiG-29s and other jets dated back to days of the Cold War. They have advanced radar and their weapons boast greater range and may allow Ukraine to better Russian air defense systems. Western military officials and experts also say the F-16s will help Kyiv integrate with Western allies and break Ukraine's reliance on aging hardware built by its enemy. Training enough pilots and support crew to operate the new fleet will take months. 8 pilots and 65 support personnel are in the first stages of learning how to operate the F-16 in Denmark. Others are in Arizona and Romania. Although the exact number of aircraft has not been disclosed, experts expect it to be in the dozens. Kelly Greco, a senior fellow at the Stimson Center, adds that air combat training would be next, with 6 to 8 weeks of instruction. Air-to-ground training would last another 2 months. A Ukraine Air Force spokesperson said he did not expect the jets to operate in Ukraine until 2024. Russia has warned against delivering F-16s to Ukraine, with its ambassador to Denmark saying in August that doing so would be, quote, an escalation of the conflict.
We slip into a short break now. News and updates will continue on the other side.
China won't let us rest easy on our borders, but they will keep flooding our markets. What does Xi Jinping really want?
I think he wants the Indian market, no doubt about it. It's really a matter of showing their dominance.
India's great Chinese conundrum.
Nobody can contain it. Not the United States, not China, not anybody else.
Frenemies. This and more. Streaming on the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT. News 9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Today,
she is the only smiling leader in Rajasthan. All eyes will be on her moves if the BJP returns to power.
Vasundhara Raje Scindia defied all the odds to become the first woman chief minister of Rajasthan.
She has the uncanny ability of striking rapport with all sections. That's why she is very popular in her constituency, not only in her constituency but in entire Rajasthan.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now. BrahMos. Stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's navy has threatened its neighbors, and they are turning to the BrahMos for protection. The warship killer. This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
European leaders gathered in Brussels on Thursday for a high-stakes summit on Ukraine ascension. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is blocking both EU membership talks and giving 50 billion euros in financial aid to Kyiv from the EU budget, much to the exasperation of this EU partners at a crucial time for Ukraine.
This is a historic moment.
In a major political win for Kyiv, European Union leaders agreed on Thursday to start membership talks with Ukraine. EU diplomats and officials said it was unexpected and that the green light came as Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who had for weeks said he would block a deal, agreed to leave the room knowing the vote would go ahead. Such an unusual way to approve a decision, especially such a major one, is unheard of in Brussels. Orban confirmed that he had abstained from the vote on what he called a bad decision.
Mr. Orban was very well aware of the decision that was going to be made.
Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo.
The message that is given is a very clear message. We are on the side of the Ukrainians who are fighting for our freedom, who are fighting for respect of their country. And the message to Moscow is also a very clear one. We will not be intimidated. The European unity is there, and we are on the side of the Ukrainians, even at the most difficult moments.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed the move in a social media post, writing, "History is made by those who don't get tired of fighting for freedom." The European Council also decided on Thursday to open accession negotiations with Moldova, grant EU candidate status to Georgia, and also advance a bid by another hopeful, Bosnia and Herzegovina. For Ukraine, the talks themselves are likely to take years. The decision comes at a time when Ukraine's counteroffensive against Russia's invasion has failed to make major gains, and U.S. military aid has become more uncertain.
Russia currently has a total of 617,000 troops fighting in battle zones in Ukraine, President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday at his annual press conference. Putin also said that children of people he knows have fought in Ukraine as part of the private military companies and some have died. The Russian president added that veterans from private military companies who fought in Ukraine should receive same social support from the state as any other war veterans. Russian President Vladimir Putin emphasized the significance of maintaining United Nations mechanisms, including the veto power held by the Permanent Security Council member states. When questioned by a Turkish journalist about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, Putin expressed his hope for a meeting with Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan in early 2024.
Что касается роли ООН, вы знаете, здесь нет ничего необычного.
Я тоже говорил об этом. Ведь во времена холодной войны очень часто различные силы, различные государства блокировали те или иные решения, которые продвигали другие страны.
Russian President Vladimir Putin asked about a possible prisoner swap for Wall Street journalist and reporter Ivan Gershkovich and U.S. Marine veteran Paul Whelan. Now, the president said that he hoped an agreement would be reached, but the U.S. had to listen to Russia's conditions. In a significant development, Finland officially reopened its border after a temporary closure as the first buses departed from St. Petersburg last evening on December 13th. Now, the shutdown last month aimed to curb a spike in refugee arrivals from Russia. Nearly 900 asylum seekers had entered Finland in November, prompting the closure. Now, the move was allegedly linked to Moscow's displeasure with Finland's increasing defense cooperation with the United States. Notably, passengers crossing the reopened border expressed relief and happiness.
Я очень рада, что открыли границу, что мы все теперь можем спокойно ездить, и есть эта возможность видеться с родственниками, с близкими, и они могут приезжать к нам и навещать нас тоже.
In Sofia, Bulgaria, the dismantling of 70-year-old Soviet monument has become a huge controversy. The monument to the Soviet army was erected in 1954, which was symbolized victory over fascism and decades of communist rule. While considered structurally unsafe, the removal fulfills a promise by the newly elected mayor. Many support a relocation to a museum, but opposition, including pro-Moscow groups, want a referendum on it. The park, which was often painted with various colors, has cultural significance as well. Despite concerns about erasing history, authorities press on, sparking criticism from Russia. Now, the dismantling has slated for a month and aims for completion by Christmas, with figures preserved in a socialist art museum. An Australian mother, Kathleen Folbig, has been cleared of killing her 4 children after 2 decades being behind the bars. The New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal overturned her convictions based on new scientific discoveries, leading to an unconditional pardon in June. The case highlights the evolving role of science in the pursuit of justice. Have a look.
An Australian mother has been cleared of killing her 4 children after spending 2 decades behind bars. The New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal on Thursday overturned Kathleen Folbig's convictions following an unconditional pardon in June based on new scientific discoveries. Speaking to reporters outside the court in Sydney, the 56-year-old called on the legal system and society to think before accusing a parent of hurting their children.
I am grateful that updated science and genetics has given me answers as to how my children died. However, even in 1999, we had legal answers to prove my innocence. They were ignored and dismissed. The system preferred to blame me rather than accept that sometimes children can and do die suddenly, unexpectedly, and heartbreakingly.
Folbig's lawyer, Rahani Virgo, told reporters her legal team is preparing to seek compensation for the wrongful imprisonment, which would be, quote, bigger than any substantial payment that has been made before. Folbig was convicted in 2003 for the murder of her 3 children and manslaughter of a 4th. She had always maintained her innocence, saying her children had died of natural causes. In 2019, an initial inquiry into the case reaffirmed Folbig's guilt. But in 2022, a second inquiry found new evidence suggesting 2 of the children had a genetic mutation that may have caused their deaths. After the inquiry found a reasonable doubt for each conviction, New South Wales State Attorney General Michael Daly pardoned Folbig, releasing her from prison in June this year.
Now let's understand how the COP28 deal had gone down. In a historic move at COP28 in Dubai, countries led by conference president Sultan Al Jaber have agreed to transition away from fossil fuels. Key players included US climate envoy John Kerry deem it a pivotal moment. Despite initial concerns, strategic diplomacy and collaboration paved the way for groundbreaking global agreement to combat climate change. Take a look.
We have now reached the end.
For the first time in history, countries have expressed a desire to end the oil age. The COP28 Accord from the summit in Dubai calls for transitioning away from fossil fuels. Key players, including conference president Sultan Al Jaber, say it's historic.
You delivered.
This is a sea change moment.
I think this is a global turning point.
Fossil fuels phase out! Some remain dissatisfied with concessions allowing for the use of tech such as carbon capture to keep greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere. But striking a deal was by no means a foregone conclusion. Here's a look at how the COP28 deal got done.
I promised I would roll up my sleeves.
Before the conference, COP28 President Al Jaber was pilloried by environmental activists as untrustworthy. He runs the United Arab Emirates State Oil Company. But he didn't want to oversee a failed conference. Before it started, his office pumped up climate initiatives, like an EU and US-led declaration by nations to triple renewable energy capacity by 2030.
The urgency of this moment is clear.
And a US-China cooperation agreement reached in November. Sources say getting a deal took deft maneuvering by the conference host, as well as back-channel diplomacy from the top envoys of the world's biggest polluters, the US and China. Al Jaber intentionally stirred the pot, sources say. His approach was to put out deliberately provocative drafts for a deal that forced negotiators to reveal the outer limits of their positions, then find common ground. On December 11th, Al Jaber's draft deal outlined a broad menu of options that countries could, not should, take to fight climate change. Those options ranged from carbon capture to reducing fossil fuel use or cutting subsidies. Missing was any mention of a phase-out. That sparked outrage, including from small island nations.
We will not sign our gift certificates. It is our very survival that is at stake.
While scores of countries came to Dubai wanting language around phasing out fossil fuels entirely, it was something oil group OPEC particularly opposed. But the outrage expressed at the summit was the desired effect, according to one source, who said the move made clear where people stood.
Mr. Kerry.
The presidency then took meetings into the early morning hours over the next days.
We're going to work.
What's going on?
And did not release an updated draft until December 13th. A day after the summit's scheduled end. The term phase out remained a red line that some like China and Saudi Arabia would never accept. So U.S. envoy John Kerry and his Chinese counterpart Xie Jinhua found a workaround. They already had a roadmap from their recent climate cooperation in November. Use words that essentially mean the same thing as phase out. With China and the U.S. aligned, it was just a matter of getting OPEC on board. One source said it was Kerry, China, and the Saudis that played a constructive role at the 11th hour. A source familiar with the negotiations said the final flurry of diplomacy ensured the deal would pass.
Meanwhile, China is in the grip of a severe cold spell as it is experiencing heavy snowfall, disrupting transportation in various cities like Beijing. The China Meteorological Administration predicts a further 8 to 12 degrees Celsius drop in more regions over the next 2 days, with some areas including central Inner Mongolia and northern Shaanxi facing a plunge of more than 20 degrees Celsius. This extreme weather follows a year of climate extremes in China, from frigid temperatures in January to record rainfall and scorching summer heat, all attributed to the impacts of climate change. In northeast Australia, tropical storm Jasper caused havoc with heavy rains downing trees, cutting power and triggering evacuations. After hitting Queensland on December 13th as a Category 2 storm, it's now a tropical low heading northwest. The storm, now downgraded to a tropical low, was tracking in a northwesterly direction toward the Gulf of Carpentaria, where it would intensify back to cyclonic strength over the weekend, Australia's Bureau of Meteorology said in its latest update after tracking the storm. Local residents have also expressed concerns.
Not bad, this area.
So we're really trying to just encourage people today to stay up to date with those warnings, as this is an evolving situation and the rainfall has not stopped yet and is likely to continue well into today and into this evening as well. As well as the riverine flooding risk, we've also seen heavy to locally intense rainfall, which can lead to flash flooding.
Well, I was at home and it was just sideways rain, mate, just going straight past the window. Yeah, if pigs were going to fly, it was last night, but it was pretty. it was all good. I think everyone survived it, so that's the main thing.
In latest developments from Antarctica, American Stephanie Estridge and Michael Higgins secured victory in the Antarctic Ice Marathon in a remarkable feat on December 13th. Now, battling sub-zero temperatures near the South Pole, Estridge finished the marathon in 5 minutes and 4 seconds, conquering 3 continents in the marathon run.
It was hard. That was the hardest marathon I've ever won. I could tell you that. But it was beautiful. I mean, how can you compete with it? This is just insane. You hate your life, but you look around, you're like, okay, it's not so bad.
While Higgins from Dallas, Texas won his first international marathon in just 4 minutes and 1 second.
An incredible setup where the back turn was kind of a lull, right? The wind would die down, the sun was up, it was easy, and then the final turn around the end, just absolutely brutal. Just 30-knot Antarctic winds blasting you in the face, but man, what an incredible experience.
Notably, both winners now join the elite club of marathon champions, etching their triumph in challenging bites of Antarctic winds. Eddie Jones is making a comeback as Japan's rugby head coach. The Australian is taking up the role again after resigning as Australia's head coach in October following a not-so-great Rugby World Cup for the Wallabies. Now, this time around, he has got big plans for Japan. The 63-year-old, who has Japanese connections through his mother and wife, wants to turn Japan into a top-8 team with a speedy style of playing. According to the organizations, he will be officially starting his duties on January 1st, and he's denying any talks about Japan's job before his team's final World Cup warm-up. It's fresh start, and Jones is ready to make some moves in Japanese rugby. Madrid Zoo and Aquarium just started off the Christmas vibes in a unique way. 3 drivers who were dressed up as 3 kings dove into the shark tank to set up a nativity scene. Picture this, a surprised-looking baby Jesus chilling next to Mary and Joseph while these festive divers bring in the gifts. It's like Christmas underwater. The whole setup is on display for everyone to enjoy until January 8th.
Nunca, nunca, nunca.
Mexico City is glowing with festive spirit this Christmas season as the second largest square in the world is adorned with vibrant decorations. The traditional poinsettia flower is a beloved symbol of the holiday season, is adding to the enhancing ambience. Zocalo hosting the National Palace, the President's residence, the capital's cathedral and the city government's headquarters have become a captivating focal point of celebration. The cityscape, aglow with seasonal decor, reflects the joy and warmth of the holiday season, creating a visually stunning and festive atmosphere for residents and visitors alike. Well, that's all in this edition of The Bulletin, but up next, a special documentary on the Maratha community's struggle for inclusion in the OBC list in Maharashtra.
Those who are economically